Hello, and welcome to On the Turf, hosted by three guys who have never been on the turf. I'm Sri Belmkonda.
I'm Rohan Patel.
And we officially kicked off Arjun and Ryan off the podcast. It's just going to be two guys now, the two, your favorite co-hosts. So screw Arjun, and let's just talk football.
It's good for our blood
lots
pressure.
of things happen.
We're a lot less stressed when he's
Arjun just stresses. Yeah, Arjun just stresses out. It just makes it for a less productive discussion in general. So I think it's a good. Yeah, I think it's a good decision that we made. We'll see if Arjun wants to come back, and he'll have to interview again and everything. So, Arjun, sorry, but we're not really sorry. Anyways, we had a ton of stuff happen this week. I think good news, bad news, sad news. But let's first talk about the Arizona Cardinals. We just got some huge news just today, actually. I don't know what Rohan's feeling right now, so I'm just gonna let him have the floor.
Yeah, so obviously earlier today, recording on Tuesday, J.J. Watt announced he's retiring at the end of the year. Now, honestly, I think this move took me a bit by surprise. He'd been performing really well these last few games. Really seemed to sort of find his dominant previous self again. So I'm a bit surprised that he is retiring at this point in time. But I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's a huge blow to the Cardinals. We clearly needed a lot of help on defense anyways. I think he was going to be the solution. I mean, he is a very, very good piece of our defense, one of the best. But at the end of the day, it's not something that's going to hurt a lot. I think more so it's disappointing that such a historic NFL player is retiring. I mean, you're talking about someone 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award, 5-time All-Pro, 5-time Pro Bowler, arguably the best defensive end in his prime in the entire NFL or in the entire NFL history. So obviously it's a huge moment for him to be retiring. For the Cardinals, I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference, but for the NFL, it's definitely a huge loss.
Yeah, huge. I feel like we all talked about just how dominant he was. He even played wide receiver. He's caught probably more touchdowns than half of the receivers in the NFL just because of how shitty some receivers have been this year and in previous years. So pretty much, amazing player, amazing guy all around. Kind of a sad ending that he had to end his career with the Cardinals, who are right now 4-11.
What was the point?
Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. I feel like some people will appreciate that, but
he played the Texans before. That's even worse.
Yeah, but they made the playoffs and they had some highs, but the Cardinals have just had lows for the past. Never mind. That's not the point.
Okay.
Sorry, Cardinals fans. Sorry, J.J. Watt. Steelers are always
it's
open.
Disappointing that he never got to win a championship or really be on a good contending
There's a ton
team.
of players in the NFL. Yeah,
but at the end of the day, still an easy first ballot Hall of Famer. And I mean, you just can't forget how dominant he was in his prime.
Yeah, for sure. Another sad news that we found out, I think not today, but a couple of days ago, was Steelers legend Franco unfortunately passed away. This man probably is so famous. He was obviously amazing for that immaculate reception that he had. I feel like they're in the Pittsburgh International Airport. As soon as you walk in, or before you get to the gates, there's this huge figurine of him with that immaculate reception. It's amazing, and everyone's always looking at it. It's any Pittsburgh. If you visit Pittsburgh, that's one of the things you'll see in the airport, and that just for me, just truly speaks to how iconic that moment was. And even not just that, he was 4-time Super Bowl champion. And the Steelers really, they honored him in that game. Everyone wore number 32 against the Raiders. And we got a really clutch win against the Raiders as well. So thank you, everything, Franco Harris, for everything that you've done for Pittsburgh. But Pittsburgh rallied together. We got the dub against the Raiders. So go Steelers.
That was poetic, the fact that almost 50 years later, right after he passes, and you get another last-second touchdown to beat the Raiders. That was a ridiculous ending. And I mean, when we talk about the immaculate reception, I was seeing the stat that before that, the Steelers had never won a playoff game. That was the first playoff game that they won, and that completely turned around that franchise. After that, you win 4 Super Bowls in a decade, 6 overall for the franchise. So you can also really point to that as the turning point for the Steelers into becoming arguably, I was going to say the best franchise in the league, but that hurts too much to say. So I'm not going to say that.
Hey, come on. You can say it. It's all right.
But yeah, I mean, huge moment for them. And it's very sad about his passing. But moving on to some other sad news, happy news maybe if you're a Broncos fan, but
Yeah,
Christmas came a day late for them. Nathaniel Hackett gets fired after their 51-14 loss to the Rams, which was
that's crazy.
arguably their worst loss of the year, even though they weren't really playing for anything. But still, that was their worst performance, I think, hands down, that we've seen this year. So now you're left with a team that couldn't even get a head coach to last the entire year. They'll re-enter the coaching search next this offseason, look for someone else. And I mean, where do you go from here? You have Russell Wilson, who you're paying over $200 million. You have on contract for the next 4 years. Is he still the quarterback there? Is this solely a coaching issue, or is this something that's runs deeper than just Hackett?
Yeah, I thought before, Hackett came in, before Russ came in, like it was only a quarterback issue. And, they looked and, they fired their coach. They took out Drew Lock. They put in Russell Wilson and they put in, what we all thought. We didn't really have any expectations for Nathaniel Hackett going in. But, I feel like he, underperformed to whatever expectations that he actually had, which is pretty crazy considering that the expectations were pretty low for him. But I think honestly they can look to names like Sean Payton, who I think would honestly be like amazing in Denver. And even though he's more of it like he's worked with the Saints, and even though he's been out of the loop for a couple of years, I think he'll be amazing in Denver. But I think you just need someone to the offensive play calling just needs to get better. The offense in Denver is probably, I think, it's bottom 5 right now. And when you think of those names, Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, there's so many names up there, and just like so little production, so little results on the offensive end. I feel like they need to find like someone who's offensively minded. Sean Payton or someone, any big name that really has the experience can probably just take that team and just turn it around really easily, just considering the talent that's on that team and considering, how much potential that team has.
Yeah. You're saying, like, this is a top 5 defense. I think they'll continue to be a top 5 defense moving forward. But you mentioned an interesting name, Sean Payton. Obviously, there's a lot of connections with him to the Cardinals and the Chargers. Not that the Chargers are clinched. We'll talk more about that later. I mean, you would assume that maybe Brandon Staley has his job safe. The Cardinals, likely Cliff Kingsbury will be gone by the end of the year. At least I hope so. And Sean Payton could come in there. But I think if you're Sean Payton and you're looking at these teams, the Broncos might be a bit more appealing. You have Russell Wilson, who should be an all-star quarterback, and Kyler's out for half the year because of his ACL injury. You have a top 5 defense. You probably have a better overall offense considering the offensive line, the weapons, your running backs. Maybe that is the job that he takes, and if it is, it'll be really interesting to see if he can make Russell Wilson work in that offense. I'm not sure if he can. I think that, as poorly as the Broncos have been coached, if you look at Russell Wilson, he's throwing a lot of bad reads. He's missing a lot of easy reads. Maybe he has ball enough. I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see if a new coach can fix that issue.
Yeah, for sure. But finally, we had, I feel like for Arjun more so, like less than for us, the Packers went on a crazy upset and in the fourth quarter had 3 interceptions. And they destroyed the Dolphins. Not destroyed. They beat them 26-20 on Christmas Day. And officially, I'm kind of worried for the Dolphins. I think the Packers honestly have a chance to go into the playoffs, which is crazy considering how we were all counting them out. And Arjun was counting them out too, and he's, a huge Packers supporter. Yeah. But, the Packers get the dub, 26-20. They're 7-8 in the NFC, which honestly puts them in a really good position to at least clinch that 7th seed if everything else works out for them. The NFC is just so close right now. I think there are a ton of teams that could go in, so many possibilities, so many combinations. But, what do you make of this, Rohan?
Yeah, so I mean, first on the Packers side, I think that this team has finally found how to win games. And I think they finally realized that they need to start with a running game and then build off of that. And that's what Arjun's been saying since the offseason.
Yeah.
That they need to focus on A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, and then build a passing game off of that. And they did that. They've done that on this 3-game win streak, and it's clearly helped. We'll talk a bit more about their chances in their upcoming schedule later, but I want to turn to the Dolphins next. Dolphins, now you're in a 4-game losing streak. Those teams that you beat on your 5-game winning streak, it's clear that you beat them because they were bad teams, I think, clearly. That being said, I'm not ruling this Dolphins team out. I mean, they've still put up a fight in a lot of these games. They put up a fight against the Bills, put up a fight against the Packers. I'm more worried about Tua. I mean, he enters concussion protocol again. There's more worries that they fully just missed the concussion or the play that he got the concussion on. I mean, there's stats that show that on the play that he was expected to get a concussion, he was nearly perfect before that, and then after it, he's terrible. He throws 3 picks. So I'm more worried about him. I'm more worried about whether he's going to be back in time for the Dolphins to make that playoff push. I mean, there's only 2 games left in the season. But I think that's the biggest thing the Dolphins need to worry about. Obviously, I think there's some glaring holes that have been shown in the Dolphins in these past few games. Like I said, their defense mainly, their run game could be a bit better. I think there's a few things that need to be worked out. But like right now at this point, the Dolphins need to be worrying about getting Tua back. And if he's not back, making sure that they can still win these last 2 games and get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about those playmakers on the Miami Dolphins, like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Like, I feel like they're virtually useless if they don't really have anyone to throw them the ball. And that's, the Tua Tagovailoa is gone for concussion protocol for, 2-3 weeks. That's the entire regular season that's left. And they're 8-7. And there are 3 teams sitting right under them at 7-8. And let's talk about this, right? There's, so many AFC playoff teams that, are so close to, really getting into that wild card scenario, wild card spot. So you have the Dolphins, who are 8-7. So Rohan, I'm going to ask you this question, all right? So the Dolphins, who are 8-7, and then they play the Pats and the Jets. You have the Jets, who are 7-8, and they're playing the Seahawks and the Dolphins. You have the Pats, who are also 7-8, that are playing the Dolphins and the Bills. You have the Steelers, who are 7-8, who play the Ravens and the Browns. And then you also have like the Titans and Jaguars, who are both 7-8. The Titans play the Cowboys and the Jaguars. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can memorize all this. Just bear with me. And then you have the Jags, who are also 7-8, who are playing the Texans and the Titans. Like, I just want to hear your prediction, because this is it's pretty crazy for me just looking at this right now.
Yeah, no, there's a lot going on here for sure. I mean, all of this, there's only one open wild card spot because the Chargers clinched this past week. So there's only one open wild card spot, and then you obviously got the AFC South, which is up for grabs between the Titans and Jags. The way I see it, I think that the Dolphins obviously do have the inside track, considering they're the best team. Even if Tua is hurt, I think you'll see them take these last 2 games, not because of how good the Dolphins are, but rather because of how poorly the Pats and Jets are playing right now. I mean, the Jets are on a 4-game losing streak. I think the Pats are on a 3-game losing streak. I think even if the Jets can pull one off against the Seahawks, they'll lose to the Dolphins. Pats, I think you see them lose 2 more against the Dolphins and Bills. I think that, again, even if Tua's hurt, I'm saying this because the offenses for both these teams have been performing so poorly that I don't think that the Dolphins can do any worse than that. So because I think the Dolphins win out, they get the last spot. Steelers, I mean, they're mathematically alive. I don't think they're actually alive. I mean, they're playing the Ravens, and next week if they lose that, they're pretty much out, and I think that'll be the case. The last one's the most interesting to me: Titans Jags. I think the way things work out, I don't think either of these teams can get the wild card spot because they play each other in the last game. But that last game is going to decide the AFC South, plain and simple. No matter what happens in the next game, the Titans play the Cowboys, Jags play the Texans. No matter what happens there, it all comes down to that Titans-Jaguars game, Week 18. The way things have been going lately, obviously you want to say the Jaguars will win this game, but Derrick Henry against a defense that is better, but isn't necessarily like a great defense, and it's Week 18. I think anything can happen here.
Yeah, honestly, for me, if I was just to pick like one AFC team, I honestly would just take the safe pick and just go with the Dolphins. I feel like, they've had experience. Unfortunately, like they have the experience playing without Tua, so like they know like what they have like going into the game, and I feel like even though it's his first season, I feel like Mike McDaniel will obviously have a plan against like the Pats and the Jets, who are divisional opponents. But if I were to give, if I were to just throw out another guess out there, I feel like the Pats, honestly, I feel like even if that, the atrocious play calling that Matt Patricia has on that offense, I feel like whatever. I feel like there's going to be some Belichick magic that's going to happen. At the end of the regular season.
Belichick magic. Here's my issue with the Pats, though, is that I think they can beat the Dolphins. This upcoming week, especially if Tua is out. But then you have to play the Bills, and this Bills team isn't going to be resting. I mean, it's a Bills team that can still contend for the number 1 seed, or I think they have the number 1 seed right now, actually. But they can lose it if they drop a game and if the Chiefs win out. So it's a Bills team that's not safe, and it's a team that needs to win Week 18 to maintain their position.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's just that, like, I'm looking at the other teams that they're competing with, and I think, like, number 1 is going to be the Dolphins, and just because these other teams, like, I feel like they have less of a chance of making it, that's why I'm going to take the Pats. But let's move on to the NFC. I feel like there's a lot less teams here that I originally thought, but there's actually just the same number of teams for the NFC that are looking to go into the playoffs. So the whole NFC South is just like horrendous, right? Like they are the worst division of football, and like both South divisions, like AFC South and NFC South, have just been horrendous. Like I don't know what's up with that. The NFC South, right now we have the Bucs at 7-8, and they're a game ahead of the Panthers and the Saints. But I feel like they could flip that script like any time. So the Panthers they're 6-9 right now, and I feel like the Panthers, I think we need to talk about them, right? Like they have a new head coach. They've been going on kind of a run here. Like I think we all need to remember, like they just ran all over the Lions defense. I think they had over 200 rushing yards in the first half alone. Sam Darnold seriously looks like a really good quarterback right now, and I can't believe I'm saying that. I feel like the Panthers.
He does this every year. He has a few good games, and then we all think he's good.
Yeah,
and then he falls back to earth.
The strategy that the Panthers are employing, I was watching a video on this yesterday. I feel like every single one of these teams are trying to look for their franchise quarterback. But the Panthers, what they've done with the 3 quarterbacks, they started Baker Mayfield. He wasn't performing well. And then they started PJ Walker, who had like a couple of good games, and then he fell off. And now they're starting Sam Darnold, who has a couple of good games, and he's still going. So I feel like employing the strategy of like different quarterbacks that are gonna go on a streak that teams have no way to actually like build a strategy because they keep switching them up over and over again. It's like actually really working for them.
That's the most mediocre strategy I could ever think of.
It's working for them. They're 6-9. And they have a real possibility of winning the division. So let's just go over this, right? They're the Panthers. They're 6-9. They play the Bucs and the Saints, 2 divisional games. The Saints play the Eagles and the Panthers. And then the Bucs play the Panthers and the Falcons. So we're not going to really talk about them making the wild card because I feel like there's other teams making the wild card over them. But just out of those 3 teams, Rohan, who do you think is going to take the 4th seed for the NFC?
I mean, okay, so here's my thing. I'm going to roll the Saints. I think the Saints lose against the Eagles next week, and that rules them out of contention.
Okay,
then it really comes down to this Bucs-Panthers game. I mean, if the Bucs win this, they're in. They clinch their division, and it's over. If the Panthers win, then they're tied with the Bucs. They have a tiebreaker over them, and then if they can just beat the Saints, they're in. If the Bucs, and again, if the Bucs beat the Panthers, that's also over. So it really comes down to this game. I mean, I don't know what to think about either of these teams at this point. Tom Brady has a couple of vintage performances every now and then. He pulled one against the Cardinals last week in overtime. But again, this is a Bucs team that shouldn't need overtime to beat the Cardinals. It shouldn't need a last-minute drive to beat, like the Saints like they did a few weeks ago. So maybe the Panthers can pull one off against the Bucs. They did last time, right, a few weeks ago. They completely destroyed the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. Maybe it happens again. Obviously, if I'm betting on this, I'm going to say the Buccaneers. I'm not going to bet against Tom Brady in a win-or-go-home situation. But I don't think this is as clear-cut as it seems. I think if the Panthers win against the Bucs this week, then obviously they have the inside track. I think they'll beat the Saints regardless week 18. So I'm going to reluctantly say the Buccaneers, but I think that, like I said, it comes down to this game, and at this point, it's 50-50 for me. I can't really say that one team or the other is clearly better than the other.
Yeah, honestly, I'm going to go with what you said, right? Like, I think, Tom Brady, like, he's like a clutch quarterback for a reason. I think he understands the situation. I feel like, their win against the Cardinals obviously wasn't pretty, yesterday, or the day before. I also just, kind of a tangent. Like, I can't believe DeAndre Hopkins only had 1 catch for 4 yards on 10 targets. Like, guys, let me just I was in the fantasy playoff, like semifinal against our friend. Remember Adam from a couple episodes ago. I was against him. I was down 7 points actually, because Adam's defense put up 21 points. Also, fuck the Broncos offense for letting the Rams defense do that. Anyways, I was down 6 points. I needed DeAndre Hopkins to have four receptions for 30 yards. And I would have gotten the win, but I'm looking. I didn't even check my fantasy app because I thought I was getting the win for sure. It's DeAndre Hopkins. He was averaging 18 points, but no, he on 10 targets. 1 catch for 4 yards, and it went to a game in overtime too. 10 targets. That's what I'm saying. That's why I'm pissed. You know what? Never mind, guys. I'm sorry.
I mean, listen, third-string quarterback, it's what you expect. Honestly, I'm happy we lost because it's good for our draft position. That's all I care about at this point. But anyway,
good for the Cardinals. NFC South. What was it? Yeah, so I think the Bucs. I feel like the Bucs are going to take the 4th seed. Other than the NFC South teams, there are a ton of teams in the NFC that I feel like have a really good shot of making the wild card. So we have the Giants, who are 8-6-1. Even though they had a rough, middle of the season, I feel like they're back into it. You have the Commanders, who are 7-7-1, and then you have the Seahawks, who are 7-8, the Lions, who are 7-8, the Packers, who are 7-8. And so, with all of these teams in the mix, I think we were talking about this earlier. If the Giants do beat the Colts this upcoming week, they clinch a wild card spot in the NFC for the playoffs there. So then you're left with 2 other places, right? Sorry, you're left with 1 other spot for the Commanders, between the Seahawks, Packers, and Lions. And remember, the Commanders, because they tied that 1 game against the Giants, they're ahead of all these teams right now. So, Rohan, I'm going to list the remaining schedules for these teams, and I just want you to give me a prediction, all right? So, let's start off with the Commanders. They play the Browns, and then they play the Cowboys. And, I feel like the Cowboys aren't going to get the 1st seed. So, there could be a possibility that they do rest their starters, but let's not even consider that. Let's consider that every single team is playing all their starters. So, the Commanders 7-7-1. They play the Browns and the Cowboys. Then you have the Lions, who are 7-8. They play the Bears and the Packers. You have the Packers, who are 7-8. At home, they're playing both the Vikings and Lions. Same with the Seahawks, who are both 7-8. At home, they play the Jets and the Rams. So, with all of these matchups, with all of these teams, with all of these situations, with 1 spot remaining in the NFC playoff race, who are you taking to the playoffs?
This is a really tough one. So, like we said, the Giants, if they get the 5th seed, the 6th seed, all these teams battling for the 7th. I think with the Commanders, I think they can pick up a win against the Browns. Now you also have to keep in mind the Commanders are a team that they might switch quarterbacks again. They might go back to Carson Wentz for the end of this year, considering that he subbed in against the Niners last week and performed better than Heineke. I know you said to think if teams are starting players, but for the Cowboys, I think they're locked into that 5 seed in the NFC. I think the Eagles don't need to do much to win their division. They just need to win 1 more game. And because of that, if they do win next week, the Cowboys will say, we're already in the 5 seed. Let's just rest up and prepare for the playoffs. I think that's not outlandish to say. If that does happen, then obviously the Commanders have an even better chance of winning there. But let's say that they don't win one of those. They don't beat the Cowboys. Let's say the Cowboys play their starters and they win, as they likely would. Then they finish at 8-1. And then you look at all of these other teams, the Lions, the Packers, the Seahawks, right?
Yeah.
Now, whichever team.
So I guess you have to.
They need to win out pretty much. Yeah. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. So which one of those teams do you think will win out? Go 9-8 over the Commanders, who are 8-1.
None of these stand out to me and scream that they're going to win out. I mean, there's flaws to each of these teams. The Seahawks, I think that they're on a 3-game losing streak. They're facing another team on a losing streak in the Jets, and I think that's one that obviously would, if you're talking about winning out, they need to win that game, right? And if the Jets have Mike White back, the way the Seahawks have been playing lately, I think that they could drop that game. The Rams have been playing better too. You saw it last week against the Broncos. Just because they're playing for nothing doesn't mean that they won't come out and try to beat you. They could lose that game as well. For the Packers, The Vikings are obviously a tough opponent, and the Vikings aren't going to hit the brakes now. Vikings already beat the Packers earlier this year. Again, this is a new Packers team, considering the way their offense is playing now. But are you saying that they beat the Vikings and Lions back-to-back, both teams that they've already lost to this year? I don't know if you can bet on that either.
Good point, yeah.
Then the Lions, I think they can beat the Bears this upcoming week, but then you play the Packers, and with the way that they played against the Panthers last week and got ran all over, maybe the Packers can do the same thing. My point is there's a lot of uncertainty with each of these teams. And saying that
so answer the question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So who do you think? With all this uncertainty, I know it's hard to pick, but just give me something. What do you think? What's your prediction?
I think if I had to bet on one of these teams, it's the Packers. As much as I hate to say it, they make the most sense. I mean, they're on a hot streak. They're playing two divisional rivals at home. The Vikings defense has looked shaky, and they win a lot of close games. Maybe Aaron Rodgers can pull out some magic there. Then you get the Lions at home, and I think Aaron Rodgers can take care of the Lions himself. I think they can do that. So I think it comes down to the Vikings game for them. If they win that one, then I feel pretty confident that they can win out. But even then, despite all of this that we're saying, the Commanders still have the inside track. They have the best record. That tie is really keeping them afloat, I think. And they get an easy game against the Browns next week, and then they go to hopefully a resting Cowboys for them and can beat them. So I think the Commanders still have the inside track, but if it's one of those outside teams looking in, I think you place your bets on the Packers.
Yeah, I'm honestly so glad Arjun isn't on this podcast right now, or else he would going crazy right now.
No, he would.
I also agree with Ro
right now, bro. He'd be
because I also agree with you.
So good. I was right about the Packers the entire time. It's okay. Even if they make it, they're getting bounced first round.
Yeah, honestly, you know what's very interesting though is that see if the Packers do get the 7th seed, and the Vikings retain the 2nd seed, we could I have a really weird feeling it's going to be the Packers versus the Vikings in the first round. And if anyone is going to upset the Vikings, I feel like the best chance is for someone who has the most experience against them, and that's Aaron Rodgers. So I'm going to pray that it's just not the Packers winning out.
All right. So, but last, we'll talk about some of the clinched teams that already have punched their ticket to the playoffs. We'll talk about whether they're actually contenders or whether they're pretenders in the playoffs. So we'll start with the NFC actually, considering we just talked a lot about these NFC teams. So let's start where we left off with the Vikings. Vikings, you're sitting in the 2 seed right now. You're 12-3. Come off 2 really close wins, last second wins really against the Colts and the Giants. Where do you see this team going? It's your team, Sri. I mean, it's a team that's won I think 11 of the 12 games, right? On one score. In one-score games?
No, they are 11-0 in one-score games this year.
Wow, 11-0. So 11 of their 12 wins have been one-score games.
Yeah. They've all been one-score games.
And
or 11-1. I'm not really sure.
Their losses, 2 of their losses are to the Eagles and Cowboys, which are playoff teams. So, and their last loss was to the Lions, who are also contending. So, what are you feeling on them?
Okay, to be completely truthful and completely honest, just a realistic, look on these Vikings. I feel like they're gonna win that wild card round and they're gonna lose in the divisional. Just because I feel like this team is just too good to just not win their wild card, regardless of who it is. Because then, if you look at it, right, you have either the Giants, the Commanders, the Packers, or the Lions. I honestly, truly believe no matter what, and just how great these Vikings are in the fourth quarter. If you're thinking about coming back from any of these in any of these games, you can come back against these 4 names that I've mentioned. So I feel like they're gonna win the wild card. Now, in the 2nd seed, as a 2nd seed, if you win, I'm pretty sure you play the 4 or the 4 to 3, right? I'm not necessarily sure how that goes, but
I think you'd play the 3. I think the issue is if you're the Vikings, you're in a crash course for the 49ers.
Yeah, the 49ers. And let's be honest here. If we're down against the 49ers, by double digits, I don't think Kyle Shanahan, that defense, is letting it happen, considering they're the best defense in the league. Yards allowed and points allowed as well. So I think that they're going to take a loss in the divisional round. And I don't necessarily know if this makes them a pretender or a contender, because I feel sure, they haven't necessarily met up to expectations because they went like 12-4 or like 13-4 or whatever. But, I think the Vikings are going to lose in the divisional. Now I'm looking to the 49ers now, right? And I think this is a team that is honestly a Super Bowl contender. I feel like pretty clearly they're a very well-rounded team. I think they've actually been better without Jimmy G with a rookie quarterback, which is pretty amazing. Just the seamless transition from just Jimmy G, from Trey Lance to Jimmy G to, Brock Purdy, which is
almost like
amazing.
A game manager, like I'm saying. A game manager, that's all you need for this 49ers offense. I mean, they've been doing this all with that Deebo Samuel through the last few weeks.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. And they've utilized their weapons, like, terrifically. George Kittle has been, just tearing down defenses. I think their run game has been smart. The defense has just been playing, like, out of this world. So I truly think that the 49ers are contenders. So I honestly, like, Super Bowl contenders, not even just, like, NFC champions. Like, this is a team that can go all the way.
Wow.
And I feel like that also goes for, like, the Eagles as well. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they didn't have Jalen Hurts last game, but they had a very, very competitive game with Gardner Minshew as your quarterback against the Cowboys. And, like, I feel like we can all agree that the Cowboys are, a pretty great team. So I feel like the Eagles are also a Super Bowl contender. And then I looked at the Cowboys and I think that, like, no. Like, Cowboys, you're great, but you're the Cowboys for a reason. And I feel like you're gonna lose to the Eagles or the 49ers when it comes down to it. Because even if you get past the wild card, yeah, I truly think so. Because, this Cowboys team, there's one thing going for them. It's honestly been, that offense being, like, really, really good. I feel like that defense can be, like, on and off sometimes. And even if they have been great, I don't think it's going to be sustainable against, like, amazing offenses like the 49ers and the Eagles. So I think that the Cowboys are going to go down in the divisional as well. So I guess that makes them a pretender, just because there's always hype about the Cowboys.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with that. I mean, here's why. So for the Cowboys, right, if they're the wild card, they beat the AFC or NFC South winners, they're probably going to go and face the Eagles, who are the 1 seed. And we've never seen the Cowboys and Eagles play each other at full strength. The first game, Dak Prescott's out, the Eagles win. The second game, Jalen Hurts is out and the Cowboys win. We haven't seen these two starting quarterbacks go up against each other. And while I do favor the Eagles, I think they have a better defense, and I think that their offense is more varied. They have different ways to beat you on offense. You still can't put it past the Cowboys. I think it's a divisional game. Sure, it's in Philly, but the Cowboys, I mean, if there's any team that knows how to beat the Eagles, it's the Cowboys. They play them twice a year, every year, right? So, like, I can't rule out the Cowboys because of that. And then I think we are right. I think the Niners will probably make it to the NFC Championship. But then with them, will Brock Purdy get figured out? I mean, Kyle Shanahan is coaching a masterclass right here, I think, by making the game very, very easy for his offense and for his rookie quarterback. But you have to think at some point, Brock Purdy, being a rookie 7th round pick, catches up to them. I mean, their defense is amazing. Their offense is playing amazing too right now. But does quarterback play, become a factor in the playoffs? And for that reason, like, I can't put all my bets on them. I do think that all three of these teams are contenders. But if you're betting on one of them to get out, it's got to be the Eagles. They're going to have the bye. They're going to have a well-rested Jalen Hurts. And I think that they have the best all-around team on top of that. Yeah,
so I feel like for the NFC in general, I feel like both of us can... I feel like, the consensus is that the Eagles are, like, ahead of these other teams, like, at least by decent margin, right? Just because they're most well-rounded. Mm-hmm. I can't necessarily say that for the AFC. I feel like the AFC, these teams are so close, superstar quarterbacks all around, amazing defenses, amazing coaching. You have the Bills, who are the first seed right now, I believe. You have the Chargers, who just clinched their, the playoff hopes just last week. You have the Bengals, led by Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, just that amazing, three-headed monster they got on offense. You have the Ravens, who have been just squeaking out wins without Lamar Jackson, just horrendous, ugly wins. That just might be me. A win is a win. I'll agree. But and then you have the Chiefs, who probably have been the most comfortable, in the NFL, have been in the driving seat. You know what you're gonna get with them. So for me right now, like, the way I see it is, like, these are teams. Every single team here has a chance of making the Super Bowl except the Ravens. Like, I'm just gonna say that because I think it's just fundamentally true. And here's my reasoning. So I'll go through every single one of them just to prove this. Also, we're going to have to end in like 5 minutes because I feel like the recording is going to go over 37 minutes or 42 minutes and then it'll get corrupt. Just like really quickly, yeah. So for the Bills, I think this is a team, offensively, I don't think really, unless Josh Allen himself messes up, I don't think there's really stopping this team. Like over the past few games, like it's been Josh Allen throwing those interceptions. It's been Josh Allen either like, here's the thing, he's a top two quarterback in this league, but at the same time, his decision making has really like thrown the Bills like under the bus just so many times. So if Josh Allen messes up bad, and I feel like it won't necessarily happen in the postseason, that's what's stopping the Bills. With the Chargers, I think it's just like it's just so random sometimes. Like it's a team that's been crippled with injuries. It's a team that hasn't necessarily been consistent offensively because the play calling offensively has not been that great from Brandon Staley. But they got back their receivers. They have the weapons. So I feel like even I predicted this as well. Like they would have a 13-4 prelim record, going into the playoffs. This is a team that has the talent to do it. So that's what I'm banking on. The Bengals, Joe Burrow. That's my reasoning. The Chiefs, I feel like I don't really think we need to talk about that.
That should be your reasoning. Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes. I feel like honestly, like the more of the it factor of like, I feel like Joe Burrow truly led his team more than Patrick Mahomes did. If that like, and it's not even statistic wise, it's just like I feel like Patrick. This is hard to say because I feel like Patrick Mahomes is a better play caller and Andy Reid than Joe Burrow does. But it's just that, you know what? Never mind. I'm just gonna let you talk. We'll talk about this later.
Okay. I mean, I see where you're coming from, and I think I agree with all of that. But I think I wouldn't go so far as to call the Chargers contenders, just because their defense was supposed to be their strong suit this year with all the off-season moves that they made, and it hasn't really been that good. Herbert can only do so much on that offensive end, and when you're going up against high-powered offenses like the Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, I don't think they're going to be able to keep up. Not because of the offense, but because of how poorly the defense has been playing for a lot of this year. Bengals and Ravens, I mean, I'm more sold on the Bengals, but we haven't seen a healthy Lamar Jackson in so long that I think we're forgetting what he's capable of. And he could push this Ravens team to a run. But if I'm betting on this, I think I'm narrowing it down to the Bills and the Chiefs. They're the most well-rounded teams. They have the best quarterbacks, best playmaking quarterbacks in my opinion. And they also have good defenses to complement that as well. So I'm going to go there. I know it's unpopular. I know a lot of you guys like the Bengals, but I'm still not sold on them. And we're going to see a Bills-Bengals game this week, and we'll see who really is in the upper echelon of the AFC. But with that, that's about all we have for you this week. Let us know your thoughts on the playoff race in the comments on YouTube, Spotify, not on Spotify, but on our Instagram post. Look out for our picks of the week and power rankings this week. And yeah, make sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify. And we hope to see you again next week. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.